Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. 5 most important breakout players for this Texas program heading into 2024. And Dill, these have been some of our favorite episodes to do, where we've talked a lot about this Texas program and talked a lot about the star players that are coming back, obviously headlined by Quinn Ewers. Now we get the opportunity to kind of call our shot a little bit and kind of answer the question if Texas reaches their potential in 2024, which, you make no mistake about it, is a national championship. What players are breaking out for this Longhorns program? Some of the names that I don't think you're going to hear in kind of the preseason magazines or the national media talk show hosts kind of talking about, but players that are going to be really important for this Longhorns program. Fired up to get into it. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. And it's been a blast taking deep dives into all of these programs. The amount of support y'all have shown truly does mean a lot. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, for the Texas fans, would love to get some names that you guys have breaking out in the comment section. We all get the opportunity to kind of call our shot heading into 2024. And Dill, without further ado, let's start with edge rusher Ethan Burke. And I put up Ethan Burke, but I want to talk about just the edge rusher room in general for this Longhorns program. A lot of the talk surrounding Texas is about this defensive line potentially taking a step back from what we saw in 2023. And you make no mistake about it, replacing guys like Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat, it is going to be extremely hard for Texas to do. But you take a look at a reason to believe in this Texas defensive line. I think the edge rusher room is going to be significantly better than what we saw in 2023. You talk about guys, not only Ethan Burke, but Trey Moore, Barron Sorrell, true freshman Colin Simmons. Yes, the inside of the defensive line might not take a massive stride in 2024. I think they might hold serve. We'll believe in guys like Alfred Collins. But that being said, the edge rusher position for Texas, I think, is going to be just dominant in 2024.
And I think that's where you get into the conversation of who's going to be like the guy, who's going to put some big numbers up, who's going to be a game record. Right? Ethan Burke, to me, I thought last year took a monster step forward. And just looking at some of the physical traits he has, maybe not the most explosive, twitchy guy in the world, but that length was such a problem for offensive linemen, and he used it really, really well, was dominant in the run game, strong there. And obviously in the pass game, just his ability to affect pockets, I thought was really, really good.
And I think what's exciting is that was all in year 2. Like, when you're talking about edge rushers kind of breaking out, it normally is in year 3. And you said it, the physical traits in terms of that arm length, the heavy hands that he has, that's all there. Going into year 3, can you get even better at using some of that length, kind of deepening the pass rush toolkit that he has, all the potential that he has? Ethan Burke certainly one. And then you talk about Trey Moore. I mean, you talk about breakout. He really broke out at UTSA, was top 10 in the country in both tackles for loss and sacks. Kind of a different kind of edge rusher than Ethan Burke, a guy that's kind of a Ferrari coming off the edge. Barron Sorrell has been a guy that just kind of flies under the radar, but has been extremely solid for Texas. I think the big question we have is, Dill, can Colin Simmons, as a true freshman, come in and dominate in the SEC? You go back to the spring game, you certainly start thinking that he is going to be a factor. I look at it and say, that's 4 or 5 edge rushers that you feel really good about. And so I think the question is, all right, who breaks out, becomes that go-to guy when it's time to pin your ears back, get after the quarterback? Who can do that? And then I think most importantly, you just love the depth that they have in that edge rusher room. Going to our next breakout player on the defensive side of the football, let's talk about the veteran David Benda, who's played really, really good football for Texas. Again, was not necessarily a guy that was in the spotlight because you had Jalen Ford, one of the best backers in the country, had true freshman Anthony Hill, who certainly broke out in his true freshman year. You made a really good point before we went live. Why do we go with David Benda as our breakout candidate? And why is he so important to this Texas defense? If you get really solid play from David Benda at that off-ball linebacker spot, it allows you to be really creative with a guy like Anthony Hill. I mean, sending him off the edge, blitzing him in the A and B gap. I look at Anthony Hill as just the ultimate difference maker chess piece in this Texas Longhorns defense. And if you get some really quality off-ball linebacker play from some of the other guys in that room, it kind of frees up Anthony Hill to be just that difference maker for this Texas Longhorns defense. So if David Benda kind of emerges as an elite linebacker in the SEC. Massive storyline, not only for David Benda being a damn good football player, but letting Anthony Hill just let the leash off this kid heading into year 2 of his collegiate career.
Yeah, and that's the big thing to me. I think you want Anthony Hill to have the freedom to be able to blitz, to try to make plays in the backfield and play a little bit looser. And again, that to me is like, can David Benda be that true sideline to sideline linebacker, play almost as that one middle linebacker at times? And again, be able to cover a lot of ground. I thought you saw some of that explosiveness, that athleticism, maybe even a little bit more than what Jalen Ford had. Jalen Ford was really good, had really good instincts, was making a lot of plays for Texas. But there were some moments, it was like, man, if David Benda was – he kind of had all those other things that Ford had, plus a little bit more explosiveness, I think you'd have a really good spot to have Anthony Hill make more and more plays.
100%. Now, the last breakout player on the defensive side of the football, cornerback Malik Muhammad. And for the Texas fans that have been rocking with the fellas the last couple of weeks, you guys know we think the world of this kid. And you look at Texas and probably what held them back from being a legitimate national championship team was probably the secondary, giving up those chunk plays, specifically in that semifinal against the Washington Huskies. You look at the numbers, gave up 254 passing yards. That was 105th in the country last year. You look at a guy, Malik Muhammad, you loved what you saw from him as a true freshman going into year 2. This is a kid that, in my mind, can emerge as one of the best cornerbacks in the country. And if he does emerge as that cornerback that can just kind of take away half of the field, take away that wide receiver one, it's going to allow Texas to get really creative in that front seven. That's kind of what you're looking for with this Texas Longhorns defense.
I mean, I think you just want a little bit more freedom to play some of that press man coverage and challenge wide receivers a little bit more, because there were too many games I was thinking like, they're dropping into like a bit of a softer zone and just allowing teams to move the ball, chunk them up a little bit. I think, again, you have guys like Malik Muhammad. If you can have him step up and kind of be that guy, almost like what Jabbar Muhammad was for Washington, and you saw how much he was able to affect that defense and allow everyone else's job to be much easier because he could always lock up a number one. I think Malik Muhammad has all the talent in the world to be that guy, and I think that, again, it allows Texas just play more stifling defense than I think they did last year, where it was a little bit of bend, don't break at times.
And going into year 2, you kind of expect this Texas defense and coaching staff to put a little bit more on Malik Muhammad's plate. You go back to last year, I think they treated him like a true freshman, which it's hard to blame that Texas coaching staff, but I think going into year 2, knowing that you have just a truly special cornerback, put that on his plate. Ask a lot of him, because I think he's certainly capable of kind of handling some of that. Hey, I'm going to put you on an island with their top wide receiver. We need you to win that battle. I think Malik Muhammad's capable of winning those kind of battles consistently against some of the top wide receivers that you see in the SEC. Moving to the
before we move off the secondary, you vetoed me on DJ Williams. I think DJ Williams, if he can play at if he can take that rollover and be that true starter at that safety, him and Makuba, I think, could be a far more versatile duo than what they had last year, where I just didn't think they had safeties who could really excel in man coverage. And when they put them out there, like in that Houston game, you saw those safeties and where that struggles kind of shined was, man, they just can't got D guys up one-on-one. I thought DJ Williams showed the flashes of having that ability. Andrew Makuba in that man cover heavy defense that Clemson likes to run, I know he can do it. I think those two, especially if DJ Williams can emerge as a dominant safety, I think that can, again, add a little bit more versatility and firepower into what Texas can do and allow them to play a little less zone, a little more tight man.
100% agree. And you look at again, answering the question, if Texas wins a national championship, you're probably getting all conference performances from both Malik Muhammad and Derek Williams in the back end. Moving to the offensive side of the football, this kid's born to play for Coach Sark, and that's Amari Niblack. And you look at all the success that JT Sanders had within this Texas Longhorns offense, I think Amari can have all of that success and then some. And you look at him at Alabama, kind of, I think, hamstrung by just a lack of consistency in terms of the passing attack that we saw with Alabama last year. You look at Texas, he's not going to have that consistency problem. This kid is a matchup nightmare. You look at Coach Sark, he just knows how to use these kind of guys, get them in favorable matchups, get them the football in space, let him be a bear to tackle after the catch. If you're asking me to pick, I mean, probably outside of Colston Loveland, who's going to be one of the best tight ends in the country, it's probably going to be Amari Niblack in this Texas Longhorns offense.
Yeah, and I think I look at two things. Quinn Ewers and how reliant he was on Sanders. I think you needed a really, really good tight end. And I like Helm. I think he is a valuable piece to what they like to do in terms of his ability to block and line him up in kind of more of that inline role. But they really, I think, wanted to be able to replace Sanders with a really quality tight end who can work that intermediate portion of the field where, again, that's where Amari Niblack, I should say, should be at his best. And again, you kind of talk about it at Alabama, they just couldn't use that portion of the field. That wasn't where Milroe was very good. So a lot of what his production should have been, I think, just wasn't there because of how that offense was forced to go. You see Quinn Ewers, he has no problem ripping into anywhere on the field. I think Niblack's going to have a huge
and especially working, I think you noted it greatly. I mean, you look at Jalen Milroe, if it wasn't 20-plus yards down the field, he was struggling to be accurate with the football. You look at Quinn Ewers, where he excels, it's attack in the middle of the field in those short intermediate route concepts. Again, going back to how JT Sanders was used, I think you're replacing JT Sanders with just, quite frankly, a better athlete in Amari Niblack. Last guy we got to talk about, and again, the conversation regarding who's going to step up in the wide receiver room. And you have so many different names, and I think a lot of the conversation goes to transfers like Isaiah Bond. Jonte Cook's different, man. I think the movement skills, the amount of different ways you can ask Jonte Cook to get involved in this offense, you look at all the different ways. One, he can just win vertically down the field. This is one of the not only fastest wide receivers, but just twitched up wide receivers that you see in the country. Then you look at the route running ability. This guy was an animal in the triple jump. You see that in the route running, being able to be explosive out of his breaks, create separation. And then the last aspect, getting the football in space and then working after the catch. You look at Jonte Cook, at least in my mind, he checks every single box that you want an elite wide receiver. Didn't get the opportunity that I think some of us expected from him as a freshman just because of how loaded that wide receiver room was for Texas. Going into year two, maybe some potential more opportunity. I think you're looking at a wide receiver that can lead this Texas Longhorns offense in receiving yards. Another guy that was made to play in this Coach Sark offense. I'm fired up for this cat heading into 2024.
I mean, you knew he could always run. You knew he'd be able to work vertically. You knew that coming out of high school. That's kind of what he did. I thought what really shined to me in that spring game was his ability to just run those short routes, get open, and then catching traffic. Just being able to be almost, to me, what should be that number one wide receiver for this Texas program. So, again, I think you wanted a guy who, again, just watching how Sark likes to run it, their guys need to be able to move. They need to be able to move really, really well because he likes to have some of those long developing routes over the middle and out to the boundary. I think Jonte Cook's a perfect fit, as you kind of noted. And a guy I think you kind of want to be your number one, for lack of a better term.
This is not a shot at Xavier Worthy. Like, obviously, really good football player, put up some really good numbers for Texas during his 3 years. A little bit of a one-trick pony. Like, I don't think kind of a guy that you wanted to work vertically or get the football into his hands, but catching in traffic probably wasn't there. The route running I thought was just not very consistent. I look at Jonte Cook and say he can catch in traffic like you talked about. He's got a little bit of a bigger frame on him. I think more importantly, he can separate. He can be that true wide receiver one in this Texas offense, a guy that I think is going to have just a massive year for the Longhorns. We'll cut it at that. They left a lot of damn good football players off of this list. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. Would love to hear from you all in the comment section. And if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. Peace.